Hello, my name is Silvia Garcia, and on this video, I will be discussing three important concepts that we have been exploring throughout this class, and they are evaluation, testing, and assessment. And I would like to start by giving my very personal definitions based on readings I have made and watching the box pops suggested by my professor. So in using my own words, I would say that evaluation is that umbrella term that defines the process of um, identifying my students' progress or not in their learning process. And then as I move down to their definitions, to the other two definitions, I find assessment and testing. So assessment will be that ongoing process where I can be given and receiving information in that communication with my students. So I will be giving feedback, and I will be constantly listen, watching, and identifying some clues so that I can have an idea of where my students' progress is. And this assessment can be a formal process, or it can be an informal process. It can also, when we're talking about assessment, we can also identify a summative assessment and formative assessment. And basically what I can, the ways that I can contrast these two situations is that formative assessment is that informal process where I can just listen to my students, try to give them some hints on how to pronounce a word properly, for example, or where I can receive my students' drafts in a writing process, for instance, and I will be giving those feedback or giving those comments, and my students will be having some clues on how they are doing without the formality of a grade. Whereas a summative assessment or a formal process of assessment will be a planned situation that is located or is scheduled in my curriculum. Summative is usually happens at the end of a unit or at the end of a course, and it is basically represented by uh, a grade, which will be the indicator of approval or disapproval uh, of the unit or of the course. That will be my definition of assessment. And when I think about, or when I am trying to define testing or tests, those will be the tools, the devices, the methods that a teacher, that an educator can use in order to measure the progress or the performance of students. And I can also, tests, or the process of testing is a prepared and planned process. In there you might find a connection between the act of testing and, for example, formal assessment, right? Obviously, because tests or testing is it represents, or it is an example, it is one form, it is a way um, of having formal assessment, but it's not the only way. Okay. Another way of, for example, another way of having a formal assessment without being called a test can be those journals that some students write as part of the writing process, or those portfolios that students create, so that at the end of the unit they can have a very well organized compound of information. That will be another example of formative formal assessment. I'm sorry. So that you can have, because as I was reading, I could hear what I was. I'm sorry. As I was reading, I could understand that this is a very tricky path where you might feel lost. So testing or tests are they are an example of formal assessment, but they are not the entire definition of formal assessment. Okay. They are useful tests or testing are useful devices for teachers to have those indicators. Okay. Now, when I think about the Voxbox video I watched, I could say that I would agree with some of the statements made by the parents and students, but I would actually disagree on some specific ones. For instance, I think it was a parent who said that evaluation was to review something specifically to give a grade. I would say that the act of giving a grade for a process would be testing. Yeah. I would say that evaluating would be a wider definition or out a wider process. Let's see. Yeah, I would agree with some of the students' statements that mentioned that evaluation was kind of a general term and it was an umbrella term. Actually, there was another one that it says that evaluation is the policy itself, and that it includes assessment and testing. I would stick with that definition. Mm, Obviously, it was mentioned by the students that there are two types of assessment that you can have: formative and summative assessment. That you can have informal situations where you can receive the feedback, like unplanned situations, and that is part of the informal or formative assessment. It was mentioned by the students. So I think that would be it. Um, I think that would be it. So to sum it up, um, although teachers migrate between these three terms, it is important for us to identify where assessment stops and where I am, for example, where formative assessment stops and where a summative assessment starts. It is very important for a teacher to have that clear in their practices. And it's also important for a teacher to include these two types of assessment in their practices, so that students realize that they are in a process, that they are not only doing something for a grade, but that they are also working really hard so that they can see or that they can experience some change in their learning process. Well, thank you very much for watching my video, and hope I I hope I was clear on my definitions. And all right, have a good day. Bye bye.